For the guys that don't know me, I'm Bob Frushour. Spent some time in the Army, ran my own business for a while, and I've worked the last few years with music and arts. What we're going to go through is different ways that we use the machine. How many people use it only to clean brass? Okay. It can be used a lot of different ways. We do a little bit of everything with it. Do you want to go over anything that you guys have as a company before we start? It'd probably be best.
This is Erica and I work with Ultrasonic Cleaning. We're based in Freeport, Illinois, and we manufacture everything at our facility in Illinois. We build the air systems and the generators in the house, and have our own special detergent that we recommend to use. If you have any questions after the clinic, just let me know.
And if you have any questions during the clinic, it's no problem. Okay, as far as where you're going to have the machine. When you get one, everybody, whether it's a bench top or a portable, it's got to be in a room with a drain. You're going to dump it someday. Something's going to happen. The smallest machine carries, you still have the 12-gallon one? Or is that dead?
We have smaller ones.
Okay. Yeah. But the smallest machine, you're going to have somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 gallons of water on your floor when you dump it. It's going to happen someday. Somebody's going to hit the drain valve or something, okay? You should have a good source for a rinse tank of hot and cold water. You're going to want some type of tub. The Rubbermaid cattle tubs work very well for us, or a good laundry sink or something. I don't recommend porcelain sinks or metal sinks because they're dead instruments. The Rubbermaid stuff is really nice because it flexes. Anything that the laundry tubs flex. They're really good to use. Decent lighting. Everybody's camera room that I go into is usually, it's the last thought in the shop. So you got one little bulb hanging from the ceiling. It's got a pull chain. But hang decent lights. Some type of source of drying, whether it's compressed air. We started using these a lot. You can buy them from Lisa and them. I call it a puppy dryer. If you ever go to a dog groomer, that's what they're using. That's why I call it a puppy dryer. The air is actually warm. It works really good. There's no oil or moisture in it like you have with an air compressor. It works really well. Decent place to take your instruments apart, put them back together, lay them out. So you're going to want, believe it or not, some type of workbench in your camera room. You don't want to be carrying parts back and forth and dropping them. Electrical source that's compatible to the machine, and definitely rubber mats. You're working with a lot of electricity, a lot of water. It's kind of good to stand on something like that. It's safer, and it's also, as far as electricity, you're not going to get shocked near as quickly. Anybody here do anything different for their setup rooms? Is there any other ideas? Okay. Taking care of the unit, which my guys, we have about 53 shops now. We have machines in all the shops. We do not have a 90-gallon or above in every shop. This is what we use most of the time. This is a 24-inch by 24 cavity. You can put every instrument, with the exception of a tuba, in there. Because what people don't think about, you've got a 24-inch square, but you also have the diagonal from top to bottom. You can actually put a bari sax in there if you flip it. You can put a bass clarinet in there if you flip it. How many people put saxophones and clarinets in their machines? Okay, good. It takes that's 39 gallons. This is 30. Look at the difference in the floor space. For a small shop, this is perfect. Somebody needs to watch these and tell me where I lay them. Taking care of the machine. Dumping it, that's your call. When you think it's not working right, we change it. In Frederick, we change it once a week. Also in Frederick, we run about 7,000 units through the machine every week. So if you're changing once a month, once a week, once a year, a good thing to do, and it's something that I've suggested that they sell what we make it. Go to a hardware store, get a plastic frame screen, like you're gonna put in your window. Measure your cavity, drill holes in all four corners, make a handle for it. I use weed eater cord. Drop it all the way to the bottom. Take the little screen out off the hole that's down there. How many, if you don't use it every day, when you go back to use it, all that sludge is on the bottom. Water's clean. If you pick up that screen, it brings it all up. You flush it off, put it back. Your stuff. Otherwise, you're pumping dirt through an instrument you're trying to clean. Doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you do that once a day or every time you use it, you won't have a problem. If you're using the metal baskets, don't put the screen back in because it's going to eventually break your screen. Just put the screen back in at the end of the day and let it filter. Zipper Shine is a chemical or a spray foam you can buy just about anywhere today. Jeff Smith sells it. It's a great raw metal cleaner. And all you do is put it on a rag, wipe it down. Every time you dump it, it'll look new. It's great stuff. Has anybody ever tried it? If you do like tenons on, say, sax necks, brass slides, nothing cleans it better. And it's non-abrasive. Again, change the water into chemicals when you think it's not working. We use the 132B only because it's a decent fungicide in it. It's accepted. That's the one that's accepted everywhere in the world too, right? You can ship that.
132B,
Yeah.
we have another version that's 133I that we can ship internationally now. It just came into fruition a couple of weeks ago.
What's the difference between the two?
There's no phosphoric acid at all. They would add the phosphoric acid when they did it in their country.
Oh, okay.
It's easier to ship overseas, so we're having a lot of international customers request it with no phosphoric acid in it.
So it's basically a 132 without it?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The filters that are on the machines. If you use the screen, you don't need it. How many people have a filter in their machine? It's the first thing that craps out. The micron sizes can't be controlled. It's dirty, ugly before you ever change your solution usually. If you have a filter in your machine, don't buy the filters anymore. Again, the screen idea, go out and buy pantyhose. Stretch it over the top of the canister. Or get an old toilet paper roll and put down in like they used to do for cars, and people used to drag race with the roll of toilet paper in their oil filters. They'll screen it. You can take that out and flush it all the time. But the micron size and the filters that we buy for what we do, it really doesn't work. So, I don't even use the filter anymore. How many people have a pump on their machine? How many of you use it while you're cleaning something? Why? Everything that you take into that pump and out of the machine is now water. It's doing absolutely nothing. So you're putting that into it. The machine's got to work harder to catch back up. If you want to rinse it before or after with the pump, but while the machine's working, never circulate the water outside the machine. It's dead water. It's stagnant at that point. There's nothing going on, but you might as well put a garden hose in the top of it. It's going to do the exact same thing. If you're using, again, if you drop an instrument, how many people just drop an instrument into the machine and turn it on? If you have an air cavity, you have nothing. So when you put, whether it's a trumpet, a trombone, a saxophone, whatever, You've got places, everybody's tried to drain tubas, and you know there's air cavities in there because you've had them all over your shirt and pants as you turn them around. If there's an air cavity, the water's not working. So when you put it into the machine, if you're doing it that way, rotate it a few times. You get into industrial machines, they actually have arms that rotate while the thing's working. Air's your worst enemy inside of it. Where are we at? And if anybody's got a question or an idea while I'm doing this, just yell at me. I degrease, and I use simple green full strength. Oh, anything works. But I degrease before I go in, especially if you're using the 132. It's a very good fungicide. It's a good cleaner. It's not really a degreaser. It'd be like using your old chem tank with Etch Cleanse or whatever and expecting that to degrease. It didn't do it. Neither does this. So I degrease and rinse first. That usually keeps most of the sludge out of the machine, and it can do what it's intended to do. Time-wise, I stick at 4 minutes. If it doesn't clean, I can always go back if I want to go again. But 4 minutes generally seems to work as a good start-off, jump-off point. Again, degrease it, rinse it, clean it, rinse it again. So you're going to need 3 different processes around the machine if you want to use it. You can put as much in as you want. One instrument or 12 instruments, it's going to clean equally. I usually run for brass instruments at about 80%. When I do saxophones, flutes, that type of stuff, I'll drop back to about 40, especially with saxophones, because I do them with the pad. Does anybody do saxophones with the pads in? If you don't do it, try it. We do not use it. There was a myth a few years ago, because we've done this a couple years, where everybody was saying that the company I work for, we put all of our rental returns to an ultrasonic cleaner for saxophones. We do not. If you get the sax that's moldy, it's been, say, caught in a flood or something, probably 6, 7 years ago, we had a store that got wet. I had 7 saxophones that were molded. I don't like working with that stuff. So all I wanted to do was get that off, then I'd repad the saxophone. I put them in a machine, took them out, it was gone. It really wasn't there. It looked brand new. So I set it in my office and looked at it every week for a year. I wouldn't even tell anybody because I knew it was coming back. It never came back. We rented them the next year. 3 of them have been purchased, and the other 4 are still in the rental fleet. And I still haven't repatted them. You do have to change the case, but it killed all the mold, and it works perfect. We do a lot at some of our markets, a clean-only type thing, because all they want to do is eBay it. So we'll drop that in there. 4 minutes, it looks like you worked an hour and a half. And don't lower your prices, because you got to pay for the machine. Things I use it for. Again, we've already get into that. Just the normal brass chem cleans. Everybody does that. How many people, if you're doing dent work, try to charge, and you usually get arguments, to chem clean the instrument before you put your tools in it, if they're filthy? A lot of people argue with you. If you can't win that battle, don't give up the job. It takes 4 minutes. That's all you're going to do is drop it in. It's 4 minutes of your time. You'll win the battle most of the time. If you can't win it, don't give up a $70 job for 4 minutes. Okay, woodwind. Every instrument that I'm going to overhaul, whether it's a wooden clarinet or a saxophone, if it's grody, dirty, you're bumping posts, you got the green crud that builds up around it. Every woodwind, before I disassemble it, goes in the machine. Turn back to about 25-30% on your wooden instruments, because sometimes we'll attack the wood. I run saxes, because of the leather pads, at about 40. Yes, John?
Well, I'm sorry to disrupt. When you talk about the percentages, I understand that. Is the power output, is the power the same on, because we have the 39.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about that setting, does it apply to both of those machines?
Yes.
Anyway?
The way it should be designed, you have transducers mounted on the bottom.
Right.
The size of your cavity, if they did it right, is going to tell how many transducers are placed where. So on a 135 gallon machine, you should have, at the frequency, you should have the same intensity
Okay. So it's
on a
proportional.
small, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And that's a good question. Don't go out on eBay, swap meets, auctions, and just buy a machine. It works all frequency. What works for one industry may not work for us. It may be dangerous. Believe it or not, the lower the frequency, the bigger the air bubbles, because they're going to implode. So I'd say most of what we use works in the 40,000 range, right? Yeah. You get down to the 20,000 range, you've got twice the size of the air bubble. And it's not the same intensity for cleaning, and it's also not the same strength, but it's larger. It's like throwing a rock and throwing a pebble. So get something that's matched for what we do. Also, the air bubbles put out a ton of energy and a ton of heat. How many people have heaters in their machines? Why? Anything over about 100 degrees, you have a risk with lacquer and plating. If you buy a submersible thermometer, honest to gosh, buy one. If it doesn't work, call me and I'll buy your thermometer back from you. Throw it in there, let it float. Run your machine 3 or 4 times. Guarantee it's up to 80 degrees if you have heat in your room. And that's about where you want to run it anyway. Black and brass instruments, Conn-Selmer's probably the worst as far as attacking the lacquer. It's not their fault. If you lay a student Bach trumpet on the bottom of the machine, how many people have seen the shattering where it looks like spider webbing at the bell and the bow on those instruments? Why? The most intense part of the machine is the bottom. That's where the transducers are. That's where the bell's touching. That's where the bow's touching. It's not the lacquer, it's us. If you use the baskets that come with them, should have got the one out of the dry machine, you'll notice it doesn't sit on the bottom. Your horn's never going to touch the bottom. What's really neat, and I won't accuse you guys, I'll accuse my guys, when you buy the baskets, they've got this nice little piece of rubber on the bottom. It looks like the rubber used to insulate water pipes in the wintertime. I have guys call me and tell me they wore out, they need to get new ones. They're supposed to come off. It's so you don't scratch your machine. But they'll actually put it, and they work well. If you want something to protect the machine while you're using it, go to Home Depot, go to Lowe's, anywhere, buy the plastic water line like you use in your house, or the air line, slice it, get the right diameter, slice it, put it over the bottom of the feet, and never scratch the machine. It works really well. Okay, where we at? Again, you can use it for woodwind prep anytime you lap a horn. If you're using an oil base, to grease it first. But anytime you're doing any lapping on a valve casing, a slide, whatever, it's a great way to get it off. Stuck slides. If you've got a trumpet, trombone, whatever, that's come in, the slides are frozen, before you try your penetrating oil, before you try whatever other methods you use, just literally put it in the machine. 90% of the time, the slide is stuck because either the tuning slide grease is dried out and crystallized, or it's dirty and it's crystallized. They'll blow most of it out. 85, 90% of the time, once you've put it in, it comes apart. You won't want to go back and do it again because you're not cleaning where they're connected real well. Or if it does clean well, you're done. But you're going to use penetrating oil or whatever, tap it out, spend a half an hour doing that, and then go to the machine. Go to the machine first. It really does work. Pivot screws, anything. If you've got a tuning slide screw on a brass instrument, if you've got a pivot screw on a woodwind instrument, they've gotten wet, people didn't take care of it, they're frozen. I use what I call a double roller method. Go to, right now, Petco, anywhere that, southern states, anywhere that sells dog food, they make these dishes from little tiny dogs up to the horse that lives in your neighbor's yard. So get those, it's a real big tin, it works well. You put it in the machine, it's gonna float. So you don't have to drain the machine. I take coral oil, which is what Free sells as corrosion cracker. It's Master Blaster's the same thing. It's good stuff, but whatever you're using for penetrating oil, mix it 50-50 with water, thin it down. Lay that flute, clarinet, whatever in there, run it at about 80% intensity for about 3 or 4 minutes. 99% of your screws you'll turn out. Watch it while it works, and you'll see the rust just float out. It really, really works well. It'll save you a lot of time. Chemicals, again, we use the 132 I degrees with Simple Green full strength. A lot of my guys use just Dawn dish detergent like we've used for years and years. Whatever you're using, as long as it cuts the grease.
Are you degreasing that like in a, like dump the thing?
I actually have,
How fancy do you get with degreasing?
no, the way our shops are set up, this is in the center of the line in the camera room. Here I've got a cattle trough, a Rubbermaid cattle trough that I put a drain in. It goes in there first, we brush it out. Why do you want to put all that dirt in your machine? Chemicals is expensive. So we brush it out there, rinse it, do it here, take it out of here, and there's another tub with clean water, and we rinse there. And then at the end of that's the puppy dryer. Put it away. We do, last year, in Frederick alone, we did somewhere in the neighborhood of 65 to 70,000 brass instruments. The machine runs 8 hours a day. We do a lot of rental returns, plus customer repairs. But it does not hurt it. We've had them now, that machine we've had for at least probably 7, 8 years now. In normal times of the year, it runs 8 hours a day. July through October, it runs 14, because we run a second shift with it. Every rental return that comes back in, before it goes to our techs. How many of you guys do rental returns? If you're doing any volume, and again, this is not to be derogatory, we get paid too much to clean instruments. I'm not gonna pay you what you're paid to clean a trumpet. I can teach other people in 5 minutes how to do it. So all my brass techs, all my woodwind techs, we clean the instrument when it comes back in. It comes to the tech, disassembled, clean, and ready to put together. They do what's needed, reassemble it, because that's what I'm paying them for. Make sense? If you're doing any volume, it'll save you a lot of money and a lot of time. Last year, as a company, we refurbished about 170,000 instruments. There's no other way to do it. And the techs love it because they're not walking to the camera room and all that other stuff anymore.
Do you clean them disassembled or you glue them together?
Oh no, we disassemble them. And with the machines, if you want to get into that routine, we don't do 160,000 instruments one at a time. You'd never go home. Make racks. We put dividers in them so parts don't get intermixed. With the 135-gallon machine, I can run 24 trumpets at one time. I'm doing it in 4 minutes. It cleans an entire load as quickly as it does one instrument. The load doesn't matter. Right? Wrong?
You could overload it.
I mean, I don't do it in layers. You're not going to want to come to the top. But if you have a large, as long as there's space for the water to work, it would have, even solid. You want to do something neat to see how the machine really works? Go pick up 2 pieces of plate glass or the little lenses we used to use as kids on microscopes that are flat. Take lipstick, it works really well. Make a scratch on it. Put it together, bind it with rubber bands, drop it in the machine. Guarantee in 2 minutes the liquid's going. And that's as flat as you can get. So you can theoretically go that tight with your instruments. That's why I open up a slide. Anything we've talked about, Jeff, that you have questions on? Just things I use for chemicals, again, simple green, 409. If you red rouge buff sterling silver or any kind of silver and you use red rouge, best thing to get that off with. 409 is like its enemy. But I'll float 409 in water. If you don't have a machine, just spray it with 409 and just watch the red rouge run off of it. You don't have to scrub it. But I use that in a 50-50 mix with water. Corrosion cracker we talked about. What I call Empire tarnish. You have a really tarnished instrument. The dip it stuff. It doesn't polish well, but it does remove tarnish. Mix that, and you can all this stuff you're going to use with the double boiler method. And when you're done, you put it back into your container, and you can recycle it. That works really well. I have found absolutely nothing that will polish silver to where we're happy. So you're still polishing. Whatever company comes up, because this is the perfect way to polish silver, if you think about it. You've got all these little water molecules growing and floating all over. I mean, it's working. So whoever comes up with that, we're going to love them, because it's a perfect way to polish silver. But nobody has anything on the market yet. Yes?
Can you do the double boiler with something else already in the machine?
Oh yeah, no, I don't drain the machine.
I mean, with
Well,
instruments.
if you've got a clarinet or a trumpet or a trombone on the bottom, and you want to do whatever, yeah, because this floats on top. It can run at the same time. When you get the pans, do this. They gotta sound cheap. Seriously. The thinner they are, the better they work. Because you want it to vibrate. You want the stuff to go through it and work. Another thing you can do for floating, do not, or if you want to use this, one of my guys made this. I readed them all out of metal. Get a thin metal. This, because it's at this point triangular shape, it's going to go in this way. It's a little canoe that floats. So you can put your flute or whatever in there, and when it's time to put it back into the bottle, the solution, just open the valve. It's really kind of neat. But do it out of metal. This does work, but you're going to have to do it longer. It's too thick. It just doesn't vibrate as quickly. I didn't bring, yes I did. Sax pads. Everybody, years ago, it's slowly changing, argued about sax pads. Any sax pad made probably in the last 12 to 15 years is treated extremely well. If you're buying whatever, treat your sax pads after you do them, just send me your money, you don't need it. Sax pads float. That will stay there for days and never ever go down. I found out completely by mistake, because in my shop at home, all my pads are above the bench. I drink coffee constantly, and I went to get a drink of coffee and saw a sax pad that was there. So I thought, okay, let's cut it open, because coffee stains everything. The felt's white. You can cut it. Anybody got a knife? Cut that one open. Guarantee the felt's dry. And these are old pads. I bought these at the swap meet yesterday because I didn't bring anything with me. But they float. If you are going to drop a saxophone or anything with leather pads into the machine, think back, well, some of you can't. Think back 40 years when you started. When we started doing, especially saxophones, you'd pat them, Then when you're ready to seat your pad, we use pipe cleaners, Q-tips, whatever. You dip it in a little bit of water, paint your pad, and then you'd shut it and steam it. And when you painted your pad, it would get dark. Remember that? These don't get dark. So that's the way to check it. If you put a drop of water onto your leather pad and it doesn't absorb it, because that's what the darkness is, put it in the machine. If you're gonna repad it anyway, still put it in the machine. You're gonna clean it. You can pass that around. But it really does work. You cannot put bladder pads in. Valentino pads on clarinets, anything, are phenomenal. We do all of our rental piccolos when they come back in with Valentino pads. Piccolos is a strange instrument to rent because they're all out. Everyone we own is gone by the 1st of August. Everyone we own is back, usually by the middle of November. They rent them from marching band. How many people work at places that rent instruments? You do that stupid thing of the first 3 months for $27, $30 to get your rental. They take every one of your piccolos, they pay the $30 and they bring them back to you with marching bands over. Don't rent them for $30. Charge them. The schools figured that out years ago. But we use Valentino pads and we repad them. Drop it in the machine. Looks brand new. When I put a woodwind instrument, some people don't do this, and you probably don't have to, it's just me. If I'm gonna put a saxophone in, any woodwind instrument, before it goes in the machine, the first thing I'm gonna do is take my needle oiler, and I oil at the pivot points, every key. You know what I mean by the pivot points? You know, anywhere a key touches a key or a key touches a rod, a post, and I oil it. Because if it's dry, when you work the key, you'll see it suck it in. Like I said, this doesn't degrease real well. That creates a barrier. So when it comes back out, I don't have moisture in my rods. I'll oil it again, but do it when it comes back out after you dried it. Pull some of your steels out, and you'll see oil on them. It won't get into it. The oil works as a barrier. So I do that all the time. What time are we done here? 11:45. Oh, we got plenty of time. This, if you want to, I stole this from.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that would have been
Okay.
2 hours.
I stole this from the training center last night. This is one of the horns that were hanging on the wall because I didn't bring a saxophone. I have no idea what's going to happen to the pads. Hopefully it'll stay. It's not going to play, you can tell that. If you've ever worked on an Armstrong saxophone, the pearls never come off. That one just popped in my hand. But it's pretty grody, it's pretty dirty. We'll drop it in, I'll show you. Again, with saxophones, you're fairly safe. Any other instrument, because the saxophone has so many tone knobs. But that was a trombone slide, that was a euphonium or whatever. Rotate it if you, honest gosh, when you rotate it, you can see air bubbles come to the top. It'll convince you.
Bob, even with the keys oiled, have you had any issues with corrosion getting in the mechanism after pouring it?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. And again, we do not do this to 100% of our rental instruments. We do this when the customer asks for a cleaning. If a customer asks for a cleaning, I'm probably going to pull those steels when I get it back out and oil it correctly anyway because they're paying for it. If it's a moldy instrument or for a rental return or whatever, you've all had the instruments where the cat kind of likes the inside of the case.
Yeah.
Kills that in a heartbeat. You're still going to throw the case away, but it kills that. Okay. The neat thing about them, today, if anybody remembers, I don't know where we even were, like 12 years ago, and it was with your company when David still worked there, and they brought the first machine to a conference. It was in that huge room. Every time somebody turned it on, we couldn't even talk to each other. For years, I didn't have them. Well, that was one of the reasons, was who was gonna stand beside that thing 8 hours a day, first off. And also, I had a method for chem cleaning that worked very, very well. So, a guy that used to work with them that doesn't work there anymore, and I became friends, and we kept talking about it, trying stuff. And I promised him the day that he beat me, I'd buy a machine. And we finally did. And now we bought a lot of them. When you change the water in the machine and fill it back up, before you use it, just put your solution or whatever in it, hit the power button and walk away from it. 90% of the time, it's going to deoxynize. There's oxygen in the water, and it's going to put off this high-pitched swill. It's nothing. Don't worry about it. Just walk away so you don't have to listen to it. They'll do it once, and it's done. While this is running, is there any questions about anything? Is there anything you guys do different? I mean, I'm here to learn more than to tell you. Yes?
Do you have any issues with the copper plating, like you were doing some of the chemicals? Whatever you're using at the time, and you're putting silver product in there, or something?
No, that's a good question, because I forgot that. For the solution, when I use this, start with about 1 ounce per gallon. That seems to be safe. If it's not as aggressive as you want it, go up by 1/4 ounces so you have it working where you want it, because the water in everybody's area is different. And you're probably using tap water. But 1 ounce per gallon works well. If you get it too strong, it's just like the old days with the edge cleanse and everything else. It's going to attack, it's going to pink, it's going to do everything else. This rarely pinks if you're running tools. I run a lot of tools tonight. This is a great dump your tank. I use navel gel, but you can use whatever you want as a rust inhibitor or remover. Thin it as thin as you can. What you want to do, before you put anything in the machine, if you're making a compound, dip a steel rod into it, pick it up, it should run right off. If it gels or sticks in any way, keep diluting it. You want it water thin. If you have, I take, especially in my shop at home, my dent balls, all my brass mandrels, pretty much all my tools, every 6 months go in there. Any little surface rust or anything that it's picked up, it takes it all. I'm backwards. I still believe in buffing. So all my dent equipment gets buffed all the time. I think it works better if it's clean. To me, it works better if you buff it first before you use it, and it's a little warm. I don't know why, but I just like it. I'm probably wrong. Doesn't matter. I'm still going to do it. But it's a great way to do that. Your lathe tools, anything you've got. It's not just to clean a trumpet and trombone. Anything around the house. I play with cars. I've got rebuilt a carburetor a few months back on an old 69 Corvette. First thing I did before I put it back together is throw it in the machine. Use the double boiler, or you're going to be changing the solution a lot, but you can put anything in there. Galvanized metal, I lied to you. Never, ever put galvanized metal into the machine. It degasses, and it's awful.
Or aluminum.
Or aluminum, thank you. Any other questions about what we've done?
Hey, when you clean that carburetor, you put like kerosene on your double boiler, or how do you clean it?
What I used was the spray carburetor cleaner.
Oh, yeah. Something or something like that?
Yeah, this is a great thing for a repair clinic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I sprayed it into a mason jar, turned it back to a liquid, and then mixed it 50-50 with water. Same way, anybody use Citrus-Shine for cleaning brass? Citrus-Shine, get some from Jeff if you've never had it. It comes in an aerosol can. When you spray it out, it looks like shaving cream. It's great. If you took it on a rag and wiped it around a slide, the brass within seconds looks brand new. It's abrasive, it has to be, but it's very non-abrasive. You can't feel it. If you're using citrusine and you like it, buy a second can. Just keep spraying it into a mason jar. It'll turn into a liquid, and then you can use it for all kinds of stuff. How many people scratch brush on pistons and stuff anymore? If I'm going to scratch brush a piston, I don't use anything but citrusine. I just put a little bit on the wheel and work it with that. It's quick, it's easy, and it's safe. It's a great product. It comes out of Tennessee somewhere. Yes.
The silver, the Carnex stuff, the pink stuff that.
Right.
Can you use that?
Yeah.
In a double boiler?
Yes.
Would that help? Because I feel like the solution has gotten weaker or something.
Yes,
in the
no.
last
No,
50 years.
you can put it right into a pan or something. They're working, Ultrasonic is working, and this is kind of neat. So where they're going to replace my puppy dishes. This is got a version of this. This thing is, I hit the roll again. Excuse my mouth. I think that was more than 4 minutes.
Yes.
Which will prove that it doesn't matter as far as hurting the instrument.
Please have the keys fall.
Well, it's strict, huh?
I wish that would be great. How many people went by just missed display? Did you see the tool we got in from Japan? Just got in?
Yes.
That is very interesting. I'd love to have one to play with for a while. I don't know if I like it, but it is very interesting. That's what this saxophone needs. And then all you're going to do is remember where you put your glasses.
Yeah.
Now this isn't completely dry. These, if you do one and it comes out like this, there it is. This I would lightly shut with key clips if I was going to try to save it, because these are the wrong heads. You'll see they darkened up. But as far as how grody the rest of the instrument was, it cleans the felts, it cleans the corks. Every time you do a PC, you constantly question yourself of, do I need to change this cork, this felt, whatever? That's going to tell you. It's either going to blow it off or it's going to stay.
I did a PC on a Pro's saxophone recently, and I had the upper half apart, and I had the lower bow keys apart, and I thought, I'm going to clean those parts of the horn. So
Right.
I, dump that, and ran the light in, and you dummy, look at the mess that's in the rest of that stack. And I ended up showing the customer with a leak light and said, next time in, this thing needs, the complete clean. And another suggestion that was made was maybe a demo in the front of your shop on video
Right.
to show the process and the before and after.
For a simple one, years ago, Chris used our shop up in Itasca and used submersibles and turned an aquarium into an ultrasonic cleaner and filmed it. It's on YouTube, I guess, still, probably, isn't it? If you can find that and show that to a customer, because all of a sudden there's this instrument in the tank and all this film starts coming out of it, you'll never have to sell a cleaning job again.
And we have new videos on our website, Scott and Nicole took,
Yeah. I mean, visuals are the best thing. New instruments. The factories all have ultrasonic cleaners, all the manufacturers. They do not use them except pre-plate and lacquer. They're cleaning it beforehand. They run them at extremely high temperatures where you wouldn't want to put an instrument in anyway, it'd peel your lacquer. Take any brand new instrument in your store, drop it in the machine. First off, your solution, if it's a trumpet or a trombone, is going to turn red, especially if it's silver, because it's loaded with red rouge. You'll see it coming out. If you could film something like that for especially pro instruments, that's a great add-on for sale, or a great reason if you do it before the sale of why I'm charging you this. You know, visuals are great. The more you can educate. They're only clean once. As far as saying, I'm going to clean a trumpet, reassemble it, and it's as clean as it was when I took it out of the machine, is a lie. I'm going to oil the pistons, I'm going to grease the slides, I'm going to work them in. It's got stuff in it again. I can play it right back in there and see it come again. It's only clean once. But it's cleaner than we could ever do it before. Is anybody using anything different? What are you using for solutions? Just out of curiosity, whose machine do you have? How many people have the ultrasonic versus who's got an ultrasonic machine? Who's got the Omegasonic machine? Anybody have any other brand? What you got? Oh, okay. They're working, and that's a good thing. Immersibles. If you had a stainless steel tank, and other things work, but I like stainless steel. For years and years and years, commercially, they use what they call immersibles, where you just hang them over the side, and you figure out what you need for your tank. And a lot of places will hang them on like an X and Y axis, high and low, so that you get reaction across. But if you have a tank, to me, immersibles is the way to go in the future. Because anytime you have a problem, you can replace it easily yourself. If you want to up the wattage on it or up the amperage, because all you're doing inside the machine, you're creating a positive and negative, not electronic, it's kind of, I call it magnetic action, and that's what makes it implode. And it's constantly pushing the molecules against each other, making them fight. With immersibles, you could speed that up, decline it. The machine works on everything, plastics right on down. You just need to find out what you want to go to. Also, if you want to be bored for a couple days or hours, there's an internet site, and I've never looked at their equipment, but they sell equipment also, I think. It's called Google Blue Wave Ultrasonics. And when you get into their site, you're going to go to Ultrasonic Cleaning 101. And it's really good. It's stuff that they've pulled out of different manuals and books and stuff. It is really good. Even down to it's going to tell you what type of solution you want to use for different materials.
I'd like to comment on that, Kurt. Working with NAPBIRT, people to put together a cleaning guide, and it's in process. It's not supposed to be completed right now, but it all has steps on what to use and how to do it, and we're going to be working with about 10 members and getting that all together.
Okay. One thing, even with NAPBIRT that we need to look at, and I didn't realize it until about 10, 12 years ago. I work a lot with sourcing and manufacturing for Guitar Center, Woodwind Brass Wind, Musician's Friend, Music and Arts, Music 123, all those private label instruments out there that you all don't like is my fault. So you can yell at me. I don't like some of them either, but there's a reason for them. When we put something out, I use underwriters. When you put something out that says this is a process to use, in today's world, pay to verify the process, or you'll be sued if you do something wrong. Yeah, if we're good, but none of us are that smart. If we're using something, I've been doing this since the 70s. Back in 1975, I'd have told you how great Bright Tip was. So whatever we put together as a manual, we should pay somebody to verify it. So somebody can't do something to hurt themselves or do something that we as a group could be sued for too. Yeah. You were gonna say something, or somebody was. Yes?
You mentioned what solution we're using. We've had good luck with a product from Hill Manufacturing called D-Liner, and it's also a mild phosphoric, very reasonably priced, and we buy 35 gallon drums, I guess. That's a good product. It's probably similar to.
They're all similar. It's either with the tanks, it's either sulfamic or phosphoric, usually based. Does anybody use Ken's stuff that he helped? Do you like it?
In our ultrasonic machine, it might have been something that we goofed up, and it turned white.
Okay.
So it was really, became harder to use.
Yeah, I've never used it. I've been wanting to try it, but I've never used it. We ran into a problem. We used to buy it in 55-gallon drums, only because the number of shops we have, and then I'd ship it out of our parts room in Frederick when somebody needed it. UPS kind of shut us down, 3 months ago or something like that, because we didn't have a hazardous material license. So now we're back to ordering it in 1-gallon containers. But I've been trying to find something that I didn't have to ship. You know, and I don't think you guys would care if we switched anyway, because you probably don't make a whole lot on it anyway.
Well, you could go with the 133i instead of having phosphoric if you wanted to do that.
UPS still probably wouldn't let us ship it.
No,
And add the phosphoric, yes. Price-wise, that's a good question. And I'm still going to have to pay for the. We need to talk. Any other questions? I pretty much went through everything. Again, if anybody doesn't have one, you want to play with one. When this is over, stay here. I've got some other stuff you can throw it in. Yes.
I was in a clinic and I can't remember which one it was, but you were talking about brass instruments. They said if you have a lead pipe that has a little bit of red.
Oh, good, thank you. Don't tell your customers it won't harm the instrument. If you've got a lead pipe that's red rotted, you run the risk of blowing it out sometimes. If you've got a solder joint, solder is not intended to last for 2,000 years. It has no real tensile strength. If you've got an old solder joint, you can blow it off. If you've got old silver plating or lacquer, you can blow it off just like we did when we cleaned before. The fact, lacquer's paint and solder's an added material, and so is plating. It's gonna come off someday. So let the customer know if it's really old and you suspect it. How many people have taken like that saxophone and just put it in a tub of warm water and soap and watched all the lacquer float to the top? The machine's no different. We can't stop what nature's taken care of. So let them know that there is a risk if it's extremely old. If they want to go through with it, let them. If even in the old days when we used to hand scrub and wash with them, I used to tell the people how to do it. If they were positive it had to come back in the same condition as they gave it to me, because I couldn't guarantee that. So I'd tell them what to use. I'd even give it to them. And they could either use my tub or go home and do it. I didn't care. But I can't make that guarantee. And it's the same way with this.
We peeled lacquer on a Holden Farkas horn a couple months ago. Anything we can look for in advance, Bob, before going into the ultrasonic to kind of tip us off that might happen?
What I do, I've got, there's a company called Stenel that sells a heat gun. It comes out of Germany. It's digital. It's a great tool to play with if you don't have one. I mean, you can desolder, solder with it. You get those plastic molded cases where they punch the end in, and you got that divot in the end of it. You just blow it over there a few times, and all of a sudden it's going to pop out. But you can take that, and I usually set it at about 85, 90 degrees, and then I just warm the lacquer up. If I can rub a rag over it, or rub your hand over it, and you start to feel a little bit of crinkling, it's separating. You'll feel it. You really will feel it. It's not foolproof, but it will tell you if it's going to happen. Also, with the hot air guns, if you don't have one, I'm trying to do everything I can today without turning the torch on. Lacquer, most lacquers burn in the 550, 600 range. Everybody's worked on the older UMI instruments when they were in business, and the minute you got a cigarette lighter near it, it wanted to crinkle and burn. I mean, it was the worst lacquer for burning for me in the world. Get a part from whatever company you're working on. Start a book. If you don't have one, email me when I get back and I'll send it to you. But I've made a list of whose lacquer burns at what temperature. Solder flows at around 400, way below lacquer burn. Soft solder will flow, most of it around 400. Use hot air. You can take the Yamaha instruments apart. You know how they tend to get that goldish color to them? It won't happen. Use the hot air to take it apart. If it's something that you're not going to have to feed lacquer or solder to, you can put it back together with it. If you're feeding it at a liquid form, remember you're blowing air across it, so it's probably not going to stay where you started when it turns to liquid. But hot air works great. Induction soldering tools work really great too. You know, like Votal's pad cup heater. There's a company called, what's that company called? Micromart sells it. It looks the handle looks exactly like Votal's tool. His tool was made by that company. It's dual staged. You can solder with that tool very well. It's got a high and low setting on it, and it runs about the same price. If you can't find it in Micromart online, email me and I'll tell you the name of it. I just can't think of it now. But anything we can do without a flame makes our job better. You can if you're taking an instrument apart and you're going to put it back together, before I start to desolder, I spray it with Pledge. Has anybody ever tried that? You spray it down with Pledge. Pledge works as a heat sink. I swear you will, even with the torch, unless you're really determined to do it, you will not burn the lacquer. Then you take it apart, do whatever you have to do, tin it, put it back together, spray it down with Pledge, and make your solder connections however you want them. You know, you can even add solder if you want to clean off a little bit, if you need to add more to it. When you're done, you do not go into a buffing room and clean up your work. You take a rag like this and wipe the Pledge off, and it looks like you've never been there. It's phenomenal. If you haven't tried it, try it. When you first do it, it's gonna crackle like you're frying beef. I mean, it sounds just like a hamburger on a grill. Don't worry about it, just keep on going. It's just the Pledge, but I don't know what it is. I've never went that far with it. One of my guys showed it to me years and years ago. But there's one of the waxes that's in the Pledge itself works as a heat sink on lacquer. It's really great. Yeah.
What type of Pledge?
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of different kinds. What type of Pledge? There's a bunch of different ones.
Whatever comes in that yellow can, just a normal Pledge. Just normal Pledge. You know, if you like the country scent or the whatever, it's probably the same basic thing. Back to this. They're working on this to where this was suspended over your tank, and then this will become your double boiler, and you're just gonna hang it there, put your solution in it, and it's gonna be even safer than using the dog dish. When you're using the dog dish, let me get another one. When you're using this, don't walk away from the machine because it's gonna float, and while the machine's working, it becomes a little boat in there. So keep an eye on it in case it touches something and wants to tip. That way you can just bring it back to center. If you don't, what I've done on mine at home, if you don't want to stand there and watch it while it works, drill a hole in each end of it. Again, you're going to put, I'm in love with weed eater cord. You're going to put a piece of weed eater cord through it. You're going to drop it in the center, pull the cord to the outer edges, go to Lowe's, Home Depot, anywhere, and buy that clamp they make for woodworking. Or does anybody have the Freeze saxophone clamps? They're impossible to use on a saxophone, never use them. Works great for this. And you're just going to clamp the cord to the side, and then it won't float. Okay? What other questions real quick? Who's got the knife? Here, cut this one. That's been in there for a while. But saxophone, all pads, cannot put bladder pads in the machine. Synthetics, leather. But you can't put bladder in it only because it will blow the skins apart.
You didn't need an knife on this one.
Oh, you didn't need a knife? And these are about 20 years old. Is it still fairly dry?
No, it's the felt's wet.
Okay. And again, when you think, when we do this on an instrument, padding, before you put this in, you're going to put at least 15, 20 thousandths of some type of cylinder in the back, whether it's shellac, hot melt, whatever. So it's going to be even more watertight than it is in this state. It really does work. The only thing I caution is on, if you're going to do wood, turn it down. You can always put it back in again, but initially turn it down. Grenadilla, a lot of it in today's world, or the wood that they use, the manufacturers dye it. Dye, again, is paint. We're adding it to it. We're going to separate it. So turn it down. Personally, I like the look of natural wood, and I do clarinets and stuff. If I can talk the customer into it, when you know the old Noblays and things like that, once you clean them and start to work them back up, you get these real nice red and orange tints to the wood. I think that looks much better than a black clarinet. So if I can talk to people into it, I like that. I'm running out of stuff, but you guys got the questions. Ed's got a question. He just came in. Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to add on that pledge. Usually we'll pledge down the whole, if we're worried about the lacquer flaking off, we'll pledge down the entire horn and then double bullet, like run it
Right.
over a saxophone, like an older saxophone or something. If you're worried about the lacquer flaking. You put pledge all over it and then you run it, and it cleans it, you know, all the little areas, but then you just wipe the pledge off or rinse it off when it comes out, and the lacquer usually doesn't flake off. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But for some reason.
Yeah, for some reason, pledge is a great sealant. For saxophones, as far as if you're in an area where you feel you have to sell the job, and you should sell the job, get an old saxophone, take the bow off of it, don't clean it. Get another one and clean it. Let them see what, because nothing gets it out of the bottom any better today than back in the days when we used bright dip. And bright dip is a metal edge. It didn't clean metal, it removed metal. So over time, you would have lost an instrument if you left it in there for years. But bright dip is a metal edge. Trying to think, it's pretty much all we do different with it.
What's the rust remover?
Rust remover, it's a product called Naval Jelly. It's been around for years, but there's a lot of liquids out there I've been wanting to try, I just haven't. Naval Jelly is extremely thick, so you're going to want to cut that at least 5 to 1. What I use as a guide, when I can put a piece of steel into the liquid and I pick it up and it rolls off.
Right.
That's the density you want. Any other questions? Yes.
I've had some issues with not being satisfied with in my machine, and I don't know if this is a power setting thing or a duration thing. Not getting chunks of lime and calcium and other types of things out, and having to resort to stronger chemicals to getting those out.
Okay.
After I ultrasonic, is that? And I appreciated your comment about too much of the solution, because I get
Oh, too much, you pink it up.
and I got
This one is too strong right now. I saw it when I took the saxophone out, but I didn't bring a measuring cup. So we figured this is 39 gallons. So I figured I needed about 30 ounces worth of solution. So this is my measuring cup, and it's not 10 ounces.
Okay.
But yeah, if you get it too strong, it'll pink. What are you using for a solution?
132B.
Okay, I would back off of it.
Okay.
You might be in an area, even if you're using it at 1 ounce. If it's pinking, it's too strong. I mean, that's just,
I was using 2.
okay, back down to 1 ounce and try it.
Those other deposits and things coming out of there, are you ever encountering that?
I've had some, especially on really, really nasty stuff. I just put it back in the machine again and let it run. You know, I run on 4-minute cycles.
Yeah.
So if I put it back in to run it a second time, I'll probably bring it back out at 2 and look at it. I can always go in again.
Yeah.
If something happens, you know, I can't correct that. I'd rather go back and work a little bit longer than make a mistake the first time.
I'm just afraid of lacquer issues that happen.
Really, How many people have had lacquer really doesn't come off? If it's coming off, it's because you're touching the bottom, usually, or your intensity is too high. 99% of the time with the machine, we don't remove lacquer. Are you gonna eventually do it? We did it back when we used soap and water. Yeah, you're gonna get the one that's just not right. And it's not the machine, it's whoever lacquered that horn.
We recommend that you keep the heat under 90 degrees.
Oh yeah, that's a good thing.
So if you want to strip lacquer, do it at 140.
Yeah, don't, if you haven't, and don't get mad at me. If you haven't bought a machine or you're buying a new one, you don't need a heater. You don't need it. You're gonna run it at room temperature up to about 80 degrees, unless you wanna really degrease and stuff. The heaters, you know, the machine works best as far as cleaning and degreasing. Somewhere in the 180 range, right under whatever solution you're using. Find the boiling point, stay 10 degrees under it, and that's where it works the best. But that's also where it's gonna take your lacquer and plating and stuff off. But if you were doing raw materials, you're making something, just like the manufacturers. That's where you wanna run your machine, about 10 degrees under the boiling point, and it cleans the best. You turn this on in the morning, it's gonna be whatever your shop is. So it's already sitting there at 65 to 75 degrees. You cycle it twice, drop a thermometer in it. I'll guarantee you're up to 80, 85. You don't need to exceed that. So all the ones, this machine, when we first put it together, Ultrasonic was nice enough, because this didn't exist, what, 6 years ago, something like that? And I didn't want that. There's nothing wrong with that. That's 39 gallons, this is 30. Look at the footprint, first off, in a small shop. So I wanted something that would take 90% of the instruments we work on. Everything with the exception of a tuba would go in this machine. The guys in our warehouse thought I was crazy, because I built wooden boxes, different sizes, trying to figure it out, and just kept going to the shelves and stealing instruments and dropping them in. I can put a Barry sax in here if I flip it. I can put a full-size euphonium in here, French horn, trombone slide, anything, because you got to remember your diagonals. Bass clarinet if I flip it. So this takes up, in a smaller shop, much less room, and does the exact same job that one does. We did it with a filter, and I did it with a heater. And that machine, I still have at home. When we brought it back to Frederick, Chris let me take it back in, and we used it for probably 60 days before just to see if it really did what I wanted it to do. And it did. So we made some changes to it, now we have them in our shops. But for bang for your buck, and again, I'm cheap. Everybody knows me knows that. Bang for your buck, this is the best machine you can buy. And we run them, the Frederick shop has one of those, plus a 135 gallon one. There's 45 techs in the Frederick shop. We run the machines for rental returns, the big one, a minimum of 8 hours a day. That probably stays on, it gets run at least 5 or 6. We've had no issues. I like, and again, that's just me, there's other companies out there. The stainless steel tank is almost foolproof. You don't have to worry, there's no other material on it. There's others, there's a company up in New York that does different processes. But if you're adding another material to your tank, it's just one more problem you're gonna have. It's gonna be wet all the time. Stainless steel is perfect. You can clean it up and make it look like new. Timer, definitely have a timer, because then you don't have to stand there and watch a watch. But the heater you really don't need. And the intensity switch you have to have, and you want a separate power switch versus what's going to turn on the generators. So whoever you buy it for, if it has the 4 basic switches, for what we do, that's all we need. If you're going to do, and the reason I've got the heater and stuff in the one at my house, if you're going to clean tools with it, again, we're going back to raw steel. If you're going to make things, if you're making stuff and you want to clean it while you're manufacturing something, again, the heater at that point is nice. Figure out your boiling point. Stay 10 degrees under it, and it will clean just as quick as it does any other piece of brass or anything we do on a musical instrument. But it works the best 10 degrees under this boiling point. Yes?
What do you use to keep that machine, I had that one.
Uh-huh.
What do you use to keep it looking like new, the outside?
About 6 of the guys that work for me.
Nice.
No, Citrashine. There's a company, the Citrashine stuff works real well. Go to a normal grocery store. They call it barkeeper's soap or something. What you see that for Barkeeper's Friend, yes. It's made for stainless steel. Years ago, it's what all the bars cleaned their counters and stuff down with because it was stainless steel. But it works really well. Cheesecloth is what I use to put it on. If it gets really, really nasty, because I've got some places that don't really clean it once a week like I ask them to. If it gets really nasty, you can come back with a soap solution and a very fine steel wool and clean. What do you guys recommend?
Just stainless steel cleaner, and some people were using the ultrasonic detergent to actually remove some of the buildup on the outside.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
I work with food equipment at times, stainless steel,
Mm-hmm.
and they recommend never use bleach on stainless steel.
Oh, okay.
It somehow, over time, it'll cause pitting and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why that's probably why I like the Citrashine, because it's not a detergent, it's a metal cleaner. I'm sure it's removing like any metal. You can't have a metal cleaner that doesn't remove a little bit of metal. But if you try it, just put some on a rag or in your fingers, you can't even feel it, it's so fine. But it's gotta have some type of grit to it. And when you turn it to liquid, you still don't feel it. But again, if you do any type of scratch brushing, it's better than anything I've ever used. Saxophones, every saxophone you get in your shop, this tenon looks like crap because nobody ever cleans that tenon. And the receiver looks the same way. You put a little bit on a piece of cheesecloth and just work it around, and within seconds this will shine like new. It's a great product. Any other questions? Yes?
Have you replaced any units or generating units, and what do you think as far as life expectancy?
Like I say, there's probably nobody in our industry running the machines more than I do. We've run the 135, a minimum of 8 hours a day. I've got a crew, that's their job. They load and unload that machine. We've had that now for probably going on 6 years and had no issues. I have an issue with this machine right now. That's not the machine's fault. I've got an idiot in the parts room that won't rinse the instruments off away from the machine. And all the controls in the front have constantly got it wet to the point that he put a piece of plastic over it thinking that was going to help. And I'm sure this switch is shorted out right now. Because when I turn the power on, the power's working. All the transducers and the generators are plugged. If you have a machine, that's a good thing. If all of a sudden your machine stops working, take the panels off. The generator on most of them and the transducers are plugged together. They'll come unplugged inside. Look for something that's unplugged, plug it back up, and 90% of the time the machine will come right back on. But I think our switch is bad from the way we used it. It's not the machine.
Yeah, and since we make them, we have the parts, so if you need a new switch, we can send you a new switch and we can do that for you. But
I'm just gonna put a toggle switch on.
stock all the parts, so just let me know if there's any problems, we can troubleshoot, send you a picture.
Yeah.
Those things we can fix pretty easily.
And as far as if you go, because everybody starts looking other places. I mean, machines were not made for us. It's been in the industry for years and years and years. There's all kinds out there. First thing you have to remember is you don't want to exceed or go below 35 to 40,000 for a frequency, or you're going to have something that's not going to work. Okay? There's two types of transducers. One has I guess they still using the ones with the diaphragms today, right? Do some companies still use those? Where they glue the diaphragm and then put the transducer up against it? Or are they all soldered or welded now? They're bonded. Okay. Yeah, they used to have the older ones. Some of them used to have a rubber diaphragm that would actually wear out, and when it started to wear, they would start to concentrate. And you would end up getting holes in the bottom of the tank. This is like 20, 30 years ago. I've seen a lot of it in some of the older manufacturing places. But the stuff today is foolproof. It really doesn't wear out. Like I said, last year we ran as a company about 65,000 instruments through the machine. And the bulk of those went through 3 machines in our refurb facilities. And then I have a smaller one like this in every other shop. And we've had no issues, including us shipping them around the country. So if it travels on the truck, it's okay. Any other questions? Well, we're done. If there's something you want to see with them, they're here, they work, come play with them.